Good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. President Trump is right now celebrating a foreign policy win, setting the table for what he hopes will be an even bigger one. 3 Americans detained in North Korea are on their way home tonight. They're returning with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, whose surprise trip to meet with Kim Jong-un has also produced a specific date and place for his summit with the American leader. Correspondent Rich Edson starts us off tonight from the State Department. Good evening, Rich.
Good evening, Brett. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is returning to the United States from North Korea with much more of this summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un planned. He's also returning with 3 previously imprisoned Americans. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrived in Pyongyang, spent 90 minutes meeting with Kim Jong-un, and returned to his hotel. When he arrived, the reporters traveling with him asked whether he had secured the 3 detained Americans. The secretary crossed his fingers. Then a North Korean official arrived and informed him the Americans were free.
I appreciate Kim Jong-un doing this and allowing them to go.
Tony Kim, Kim Hak-song, and Kim Dong-chul have finally left North Korea. Secretary Pompeo says they appear to be in good health. North Korea arrested 2 of the men last year, the other in 2015. A U.S. official says the North Korean government stressed it was a hard decision for Kim to release the 3 Americans and that they should be careful never to make the same mistake. One congressman says he's been working with one of the prisoners' families to release him.
So we feel very fortunate and lucky that this gentleman is coming back to the United States. I understand healthy. So in good shape.
Pompeo says he spent about 13 hours in North Korea, describing it as productive. He says the U.S. and North Korea agreed on a 1-day summit between the president and Kim Jong-un that they could extend to a 2nd day. Despite expressing his preference for a meeting in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, President Trump revealed the meeting is somewhere else. He says he'll announce the location and date in the next 3 days.
We've picked a time, we've picked a place for the meeting, or summit, as you like to call it, and I think it'll be very successful, but as I always say, who knows?
North Korea and the U.S. still have more specifics to work out. A senior U.S. official says the 2 sides agreed to meet again in person to finalize the details of the summit. While at a lunch with the secretary, a senior North Korean official offered a toast, claiming, quote, "We have perfected our nuclear capability. It is our policy to concentrate all efforts economic
to keep the
Whether you ever called for the program to be continued, which it sure sounds to me like your answer suggested.
After 9/11, I didn't look to go sit on the Swiss desk. I stepped up. I was not on the sidelines. I was on the front lines in the Cold War, and I was on the front lines in the fight against al-Qaeda.
President Obama's CIA Director John Brennan was a senior manager when the interrogation program was implemented and still got confirmed with strong support from Democrats. By contrast, Haspel was a more junior employee with no policy authority.
You and this president are being held to a double standard.
If you had been nominated by President Obama, or if Hillary Clinton had won and nominated you to be the CIA director, how many votes do you think you would have gotten?
Today, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin confirmed to Fox News that he will now vote for Haspel. Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn believes other Democrats will follow, and Haspel will be easily confirmed. Republicans want to vote on the floor the week of May 20th before the Memorial Day recess. Brett.
Catherine Harridge live on the Hill. Catherine, thank you.
Welcome.
The president is taking a victory lap of sorts over the North Korea news, and he has a new dire warning for Iran. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has all of that for us tonight from the North Lawn. Good evening, John.
Brett, good evening to you. The release of the 3 Americans detained in North Korea was a goodwill gesture that really has turned into a major confidence-building step, one that appears to have only enhanced President Trump's optimism about what comes next.
The United States is strong.
Meeting with his cabinet today, President Trump praised the release of the 3 American detainees by North Korea, saying it bodes well for his upcoming summit with Kim Jong-un.
I think this is something that nobody thought was going to happen for years or more. And I really believe it's going to be a great thing for North Korea, a great thing for South Korea and Japan.
With the time and place for a meeting set, President Trump said an announcement of where and when will be made within 3 days. But he has given up on his idea of having it at Peace House in the DMZ.
Will it be the DMZ?
It will not be there.
With the DMZ off the table, Singapore remains the most likely location for the 2 leaders to meet. Asked today if he deserves the Nobel Prize for his work to bring Kim to the table, President Trump deferred.
Everyone thinks so, but I would never say it. You know what I want to do? I want to get it finished. The prize I want is victory for the world.
The president remains optimistic that the summit will happen, but cautions that it could be derailed. President Trump also sent another warning to Iran today. If you restart your nuclear program, you do so at your own peril.
I would advise Iran not to start their nuclear program. I would advise them very strongly. If they do, there will be very severe consequence.
Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei today hinted that Iran may indeed restart its program. And as the American flag was burned in the Iranian parliament, the Ayatollah trolled President Trump on Twitter, saying U.S. President's shallow and ludicrous behavior wasn't unexpected. Iranian nation is persistent while former U.S. presidents passed away. This man's corpse will also be worm food while IRI stands strong. And new developments in the Michael Cohen case today. The Treasury Department has launched an investigation into how financial records of Cohen's shell company, Essential Consultants, became public. The attorney for Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, posted a lengthy document online detailing payments to Essential. Among them, $200,000 from AT&T at a time it was looking for government approval of a proposed merger with Time Warner. $500,000 from Columbus Nova, a firm with ties to Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg, and $1.2 million from Novartis Pharmaceuticals. In a statement, Novartis acknowledged a year-long contract with Cohen at $100,000 per month. AT&T said it contracted Cohen in early 2017 to provide insights into understanding the new administration. Columbus Nova acknowledged payments to Cohen but insisted reports today that Viktor Vekselberg used Columbus Nova as a conduit for payments to Michael Cohen are false. As to the where and when President Trump might meet with Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, with the caveat that things can change and that the whole thing might fall apart altogether, the planning is being made right now by the White House for Singapore in early June. There are a number of reasons why the DMZ wouldn't work, not the least of which are the thousands of journalists who are expected to attend the summit. There just isn't enough room. Brett?
John Roberts, live in the North Lawn. John, thanks. More on all this with Britt Hume and the panel a little bit later. The administration is already working on a replacement version of a nuclear policy toward Iran. Tonight, correspondent Jillian Turner tells us what that might look like.
We're going to make either a really good deal for the world or we're not going to make a deal at all.
The day after President Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, his administration's already deep in the weeds, planning for a new and improved deal of its own. The president and his cabinet say they'll remedy the mistakes made by the Obama team.
I think we now have the opportunity to move forward to address those shortcomings and make it more compelling. So that effort is underway already with Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, and others working the issue.
Former Vice President Biden says that talk of a better deal is an illusion, and many Obama national security officials agree.
There were very difficult choices that all sides had to make. We felt like we had maximum pressure, and we used that to push the Iranians as far as they could go. It was absolutely painstaking diplomacy.
Senior administration officials say their priority for the new Trump deal will be holding Iran accountable for all of its bad behavior, to include its ballistic missile program, support for regional terror groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, the Taliban, and al-Qaeda, threats against Israel, cyber attacks against the U.S. and allies, and egregious human rights abuses, including taking foreigners hostage. The White House is allowing European countries who do business with Iran a grace period of 3 months to shut down their operations.
The sanctions take effect immediately, so there's no new business allowed under the terms that are prescribed. For existing contracts, there are wind-down provisions that come into effect. But obviously, our sanctions have enormous effect on Europe already.
But a stark warning today from the White House that those who fail to wind down by the end of the period will risk severe consequences. President Trump's newly confirmed ambassador to Germany already announced German companies doing business with Iran should begin the process of shuttering those operations immediately. Germany is one of Iran's largest trading partners, and its business sector will likely suffer the most from reimposed U.S. sanctions. Brett?
Jillian, thank you. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes and House Oversight Chairman Trey Gowdy have been invited to the Justice Department tomorrow for a classified briefing about Nunes's latest request for classified information related to the Russia investigation. Sources tell Fox News this is a direct result of a meeting at the White House Tuesday between Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, his deputy Ed O'Callaghan, and White House Chief of Staff John Kelly. Yemen's Shiite rebels fired ballistic missiles at the Saudi capital today. The Saudi military says its air defense forces intercepted weapons. Saudi forces have shot down missiles from Iran-backed Houthi rebels several times since March of 2015, when the Saudi-led coalition launched a war against the rebels and their allies in Yemen. Back here in the U.S. in America's election headquarters tonight, Republicans breathe a sigh of relief in West Virginia. The administration's effort to block a Republican Senate candidate in that state succeeded last night. Correspondent Peter Ducey has that story and a roundup of the evening's other elections from West Virginia.
The so-called swamp was nearly swept last night.
But I was taught my whole life that, hey, kid, no excuses.
Anti-establishment electorates denied 3 Republican members of Congress their bids for higher office and 1 Republican member the chance to run for re-election. But Mitch McConnell is happy because West Virginia's Don Blankenship, the candidate his allies were sure couldn't win in November, who coined the nickname Cocaine Mitch, came in third.
Don't feel sorry for me.
The majority leader gloated with a Pablo Escobar-inspired parody of the Netflix show Narcos, where a cocaine-covered McConnell appears next to the message, "Thanks for playing, Don."
I'm glad the people of West Virginia decided that particular approach of attacking me and my family was good for a distant third place.
But McConnell isn't the one West Virginia's winner, Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, is thanking.
Mr. President, if you're watching right now, let me tell you, your tweet was huge.
It wasn't a huge night for House members, though. Congressman Evan Jenkins was the runner-up in West Virginia. Congressman Robert Pittenger lost in North Carolina, so can't defend his seat. And Congressman Luke Messer and Congressman Todd Rokita were casualties in Indiana, where a lesser-known businessman, Mike Braun, will challenge incumbent Senator Joe Donnelly with a campaign modeled on President Trump's.
When I saw him clear the field back in 2016, I thought, well, maybe we can get more of us in the Senate.
A Trump-like message was also critical in helping Congressman Jim Renacci become the only GOP House member to advance. He now faces Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown.
Make Ohio first again and make America great again.
Ohio Democrat Richard Cordray, an Obama alumni and a favorite of Senator Elizabeth Warren, easily beat Dennis Kucinich for a chance to succeed Governor John Kasich.
You demanded change, and we heard you. And we want the same.
With the exception of California's upcoming primary, where Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein failed to secure her party's endorsement in the midst of a progressive challenge from State Senator Kevin De Leon, the Democrats' Senate field is mostly set. So they're preserving resources to face a roster of Republicans still being filled in.
Every candidate that we wanted won.
Republican candidates had been competing to be the most like Trump. Now the last ones standing are competing for spots on his calendar. They all think a Trump rally in a state that he won would help send them to Washington. Brett?
Peter Ducey in West Virginia. Peter, thank you. We will get Britt Hume's perspective on all of tonight's top stories when we come back. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 26 in Houston as an oil fire sparked by a transformer explosion reignites this morning at the CenterPoint Energy facility in Texas City. That explosion happened late Tuesday afternoon at the plant. Texas City officials tweeted this morning that first responders had arrived at the scene. Fox 40 in Sacramento as California energy commissioners vote to require solar panels on new homes and low-rise apartment buildings built after 2020. It's the first such mandate nationwide and California's latest step to aggressively curb greenhouse gas emissions there. And this is a live look at Denver from our affiliate Fox 31. One of the big stories there tonight, a Delta Airlines flight with 153 people on board was evacuated last night after passengers reported smoke in the cabin. Firefighters greeted Flight 1854 from Detroit after it landed at Denver International Airport shortly after 8. Delta says some passengers might have suffered minor injuries, including from smoke inhalation. No other details as of yet. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back. Let's get some perspective now and insight into the stories we brought you before the break, the North Korea hostage settlement and what comes next, the Iran deal and other stories. Senior political analyst Bret Hume joins us tonight in studio. Good to have you back in D.C.
Thanks, Brett. Good to be back.
Your thoughts on, this is a big development, obviously, with these 3 Americans landing tonight or early this morning. But it is setting the table for what the president hopes will be something bigger.
Yeah, indeed. And, you got the president now being confronted with questions about whether he's a likely candidate for the Nobel Prize. And to some extent, at least, he's pushed back against that idea. But I think, he really does obviously hope that this is going to turn into a kind of an agreement, a credible, enforceable, verifiable agreement on the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which would be a huge achievement. Now, make no mistake about it, though, this thing that happened today, the return of these hostages, is important. That it wasn't very many months ago, Brett, when people were saying that by his saber-rattling and bellicose attitude, Donald Trump was bringing us to the brink of war in the Korean Peninsula.
You heard it a lot.
We heard it a lot. And look where we are now. It has had obviously the opposite effect. That doesn't mean that we're headed for the land of hope and glory over there, but it is a significant achievement to get this far. But obviously, a lot remains to be seen.
On the other big nuclear issue on Iran, it seems like the Europeans are trying to talk to Iran separate of the U.S. pulling out of this deal. That doesn't seem to be like a realistic prospect, does it?
It doesn't at the moment, but the big question here, the key question is, how much difference to Iran will the reimposition of American sanctions make? Now, the American banking system is central to the whole world economy. You don't want to be shut out of it. Our allies don't want to run afoul of that as either. So there are reasons why we might hope that the reimposition of American sanctions will make a difference to Iran and to our allies as to whether they will join us in trying to pressure Iran into making a separate or different deal. we can't tell now, and a lot of people, you hear the people from the Obama administration saying this is a disaster, that now all the shackles are off and Iran will sprint toward a nuclear weapon. I'm not sure they'll do that. But I think, that the policy of being tough and strong and wielding sanctions has shown in North Korea that it can work. And it may now show that it can work with Iran as well.
All this pushback that America is telling the world that it doesn't live up to its commitments, one administration to the next. The response from supporters of this move say, well, the President Obama could have made it a treaty.
Well, he could have, and of course, the reason he didn't, obviously, was he knew that it couldn't pass, that this deal couldn't pass the Senate. I mean, it probably couldn't even have gotten a majority in the Senate, which is because the deal is problematic from the jump. And so
Democrats spoke out against it.
A lot of Democrats spoke out against it, and a lot of them are now howling about what he's doing or were bitching about the deal back then. So, there's a lot of shoe on the other foot stuff going on here, Brett, which is a disease in Washington that,
I know very well.
Affects both parties.
Yeah, very quickly, the Gina Haspel testimony today and the hearing, it seems like she has a lot of support inside the intelligence community, clearly, but there is a split along party lines in the questioning, at least.
Boy, is there ever. And what I would say about it is it looks as if she hasn't lost any Republicans. If she did, she might go down. She picked up one Democrat today, but one Democrat can make all the difference in the world. That subtracts one from the group that would be voting against her and adds one to those who will. It means that if John McCain doesn't come back, the Republicans are down to a 51 vote. They lose Rand Paul, they're at 50. Joe Manchin, all other things being equal and everybody voting along party lines, would give her a majority. So I think, on balance tonight, it looks good for her. And, Brett, this really is a case with the complaints about her of retroactive morality. She got kind of stumped by the question from Kamala Harris, who asked her, do you think that the enhanced interrogation techniques were immoral, right? Well, by the standards of that day and time, and by the ruling by the Justice Department, the answer has got to be no. She didn't want to say that. But, of course, by today's standards now, everybody's now on their high horse about this, the answer is that it would be immoral. So that's where we are, retroactive morality all the way around.
Brett, it's always great to have you here.
Thanks, Brett.
Up next, we'll tell you why the Republican leader in the Senate is racing against the clock and what he wants to accomplish. First, beyond our borders tonight, Congo's government has declared a new outbreak of Ebola in that country's rural northwest. 2 cases of the deadly virus have been confirmed. The World Health Organization and Doctors Without Borders have sent a team to investigate and strengthen coordination there. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to Moscow today. He's talking with Russian President Vladimir Putin about military coordination amid new strikes in Syria blamed on Israel. Syrian state media says Israel hit a military outpost near the capital of Damascus yesterday, killing at least 15 people, several Iranians there. A tractor-trailer overturned on a Polish highway early this morning, spilling, look at this, tons of liquid chocolate that are now tons of sticky mess solidifying on the road there. The chocolate covered 6 lanes on the highway, blocking traffic in both directions for a long time. Probably smelled okay. The rescue officials said the liquid chocolate would require a large amount of hot water to clear away. The truck driver sustained a broken arm. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is battling the political clock tonight. He's trying to slam through as many of President Trump's judicial picks as he can before the midterm elections and the possibility of a loss of control of the U.S. Senate. Correspondent Doug McKelway is here tonight with this story. Good evening, Doug.
Evening, Brett. Republicans are racing to confirm as many federal judges as they can before November's midterms, when control of the Senate could flip. Confirmation is easier since 2013, when then Majority Leader Harry Reid ended the filibuster for judicial nominees. Democrats, though, are still using every remaining tool to slow the process, including forcing 30 hours of debate on each nominee. No small impediment with 148 vacancies.
We're going to confirm these judges. I don't care what tactics they employ.
There used to be a time when any senator could block a judicial nominee from having a hearing by submitting what's called a negative blue slip. And that's no longer the case with respect to Court of Appeals nominees, appellate nominees, so long as there's been adequate consultation between the White House and those home state senators.
The recommendation. And that's what happened today with President Trump's nominee for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Ryan Bounds. Home state senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, both Democrats, opposed his nomination, but the blue slip change means they can't block him. Democrats attacked him anyway over a college paper Bounds wrote, criticizing Stanford University's forced sensitivity training.
You claim that LGBT people, students of color, and other communities like to, quote, fancy themselves oppressed, unquote, and therefore see instances of discrimination that don't reflect reality.
Bounds apologized for his, quote, overheated rhetoric as a student, and then recounted how some gay friends of his were once assaulted after an evening out.
And how did that affect you?
It was very upsetting.
The Ninth Circuit, encompassing 9 western states, is the largest and most liberal in the land. It is there that President Trump hopes to make his biggest mark, filling 7 appellate vacancies and 19 others in the circuit courts. Brett?
We'll follow that. Doug, thank you. A group of 7 House Republicans is launching a process to go over the head of the GOP leadership and force debates and votes on a series of immigration and DACA bills later this year. The members initiated a discharge petition on the floor today. If 218 lawmakers sign on, the House will be forced to consider a set of 4 immigration bills. It's likely that most, if not all, 193 House Democrats will sign on. So the organizers would only need 25 Republicans to launch this rare maneuver in the House. Stocks were in positive territory today on Wall Street. The Dow gained 182. The S&P 500 finished ahead 26. The Nasdaq was up 73. Something new for residents on Hawaii's Big Island to worry about tonight. Experts say the volcanic eruptions there could produce acid rain and dangerous smog. Police went door to door today in Hawaii to order residents near 2 volcanic vents to evacuate. National correspondent William Lajeunesse reports again tonight from the Big Island of Hawaii.
I hate to say it, but I'm running away.
This man is headed back to the mainland after losing his home to an advancing flow of lava, now covering more than 100 acres.
A lot of people don't have anywhere to go. This is all we have.
With 2 new vents, Kilauea now spews lava from 14 separate spots.
Heartbreak. You know, I know those people. They're my friends. I've known some of them 15, 16 years. They don't have insurance. They lost everything, and they have nowhere to go.
The Red Cross shelter sleeps more than 250 a night, displaced by the volcano. The county is allowing residents back into the hot zone to collect personal items.
But I just wanted to see if I could get into it now just to make sure it's okay and not gone.
A new eruption Tuesday forced residents onto a nearby beach when the National Guard detected dangerously high levels of sulfur dioxide gas.
What we're looking at is anything that's exceeding 1 ppm, and we were well over 20 ppm at that level.
It just makes your eyes water, your throat hurts, everything hurts, and your lungs literally ache, so you got to just run.
Officials also warned residents to wear protective clothing because with precipitation, that sulfur gas becomes acid rain. Geologists say falling levels of lava inside Kilauea suggest more magma is headed downslope into residential areas.
This is not over. The seismicity continues. There's still magma within the rift zone, and so I think for the foreseeable future, this eruption is likely to continue.
This eruption closely parallels one in 1955 that vented for 88 days and covered 4,000 acres. Governor David Ige will seek FEMA assistance to help Hawaii recover. Brett?
William Lajeunesse on the Big Island of Hawaii. William, thanks. Americans released.
Flying back are 3 what they were calling hostages. We call them fine people, 3 really fine people. Seem to be healthy. I'll be there to greet them. Mike will be with me. It will be, I think, a very special time, because nobody thought this was going to happen. And if it did, it would be years or decades, frankly. Nobody thought this was going to happen. And I appreciate Kim Jong-un doing this. What happens, who knows? But we have a chance at something really great for the world, and great for North Korea, and great for everyone.
President Trump in the cabinet room with a big announcement that he had tweeted earlier, letting the world know that there was a success coming. I'm pleased to inform you the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in the air on his way back from North Korea with 3 wonderful gentlemen that everyone is looking so forward to meeting. They seem to be in good health. Also, good meeting with Kim Jong-un. Date and place set. Going on to say that Secretary Pompeo and his guests will be landing at Andrews Air Force Base at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'll be there to greet them. Very exciting. You heard about this, and there are the 3 coming back to America. The date and time said we're getting word that it looks like Singapore is the place that this will happen, and likely the first week or a few days in June for this meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. We'll start there with the panel. Let's bring them in. Charles Hurt, opinion editor for The Washington Times. Charles Lane, opinion writer for The Washington Post. And Jason Riley, Wall Street Journal columnist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Jason, obviously a significant moment that sets the table for what the president hopes will be another significant moment.
Yes, it was clearly a diplomatic victory for the president. He deserves a lot of credit here. Clearly, this was a point of contention between North Korea and the U.S., these hostages, and, you know, it's a good faith gesture by North Korea that they came through with it. But I keep stressing that we've been here before. We've had hostage releases in the run-up to summits. We've had communiques promising peace before. What we've seen recently is a charm offensive by North Korea, and I hope that the president understands that he needs to keep his eye on the ball here. He's repeatedly said, "I'm going to get a good deal or no deal at all," and I think we have to remember that North Korea and its leader has not suddenly turned into some statesman who loves peace and wants nothing else to do with his past pursuit of nuclear weapons. And that's what's important here.
You see the pictures of Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, on the ground in North Korea, a 90-minute meeting with Kim Jong-un. Clearly, they're hearing something from the North Koreans that is encouraging to them, setting the table for this summit.
You know, what strikes me about this is you could almost say that President Trump is approaching North Korea the way President Obama approached Iran, with sort of a great deal of hope in the power of a new departure by the United States with an old enemy who is building nuclear weapons. Of course, there are a lot of differences. One is that North Korea actually has nuclear weapons. Iran had not acquired them yet. And I think a real wild card here is that Kim Jong-un is young. He's only 30 years old or 32 years old. And it's just possible that he is looking for some kind of agreement that will guarantee him personally and his family a hold on power, that not just the regime, but him personally will be guaranteed in power. And that may be something that gives the United States a little bit of leverage, in the sense that he, unlike the previous, his father and grandfather, was not sort of at the end of his career, but at the very beginning of one. It'd be very interesting to see how this works out, but I have to say I do agree with Jason that this is so far nothing that we haven't in some form or another already seen before.
He wants relief from the sanctions. He wants more aid from the West. He wants what the country has always wanted.
So the president, just in the past 1 minute, tweeting out, looking forward to greeting the hostages, parentheses, no longer at 2 a.m. So the president will be there at Andrews, and I'm sure we'll have an image of that.
You think there might be a picture taken or some video of that? Yeah, it is amazing the flair for theatrics that this president has, and I think that not only I think that it's a good thing for a president to have that sort of understanding, but I also think it's probably a very smart way to deal with foreign enemies. Of course, the terrible thing about the Iran deal was that it was so front-loaded with both bundles, pallets of cash, and then real money and sanctions relief. It was all front-loaded, and all of the tough stuff came later. And we can all debate about whether or not that stuff is working or not. But to be sure, as Donald Trump approaches this, I don't think that he is going to front load things, and it would be terrible if he did front load all the goodies at the beginning and then had the tough stuff later on.
You're going to have to entice them somehow.
Sure,
to get them.
absolutely.
That was how the last North Korea deal was structured. It was all front loaded.
Yeah.
But I also think that a lot of the experts now are saying that pulling out of the Iran deal is going to undermine the North Korea deal. I kind of see that as a little bit differently. I think that it shows that Donald Trump is willing to sort of stick to what he believes, which is an important thing. But it also means, I hope it means, that what Donald Trump winds up doing is gets an actual treaty that Congress approves.
To that point, I want to read this because I just felt it was interesting. National Review. President Obama had the chance to make a true American promise by submitting the Iran deal as a treaty, but he knew that America wouldn't make that deal. He knew that most of the Senate, including a number of Democrats, were opposed to the deal. The Iran deal did not represent America's word. It represented Obama's word. Under the American system, one president's pledge does not bind the next president. There is a constitutional process for securing enduring international obligations. In other words, if a president wants to preserve his policies, he should follow constitutional processes. Donald Trump didn't break an American promise. He corrected an American mistake. I think that was interesting, well written, and the pushback to the criticism that this is.
The Susan Rice's and the John Kerry's and the president himself, former president himself, Obama, complaining about this. President Obama neither sought nor received permission from Congress or approval from Congress to do this, and which paved the way for the way Trump was able to roll it back. They
Whether
have no
right
one
or
to
wrong
blame.
as far as the geopolitical, where it is, that's the constitutional.
That was the initial sin here. Because that is not how you go about dealing with foreign powers when it comes to cutting deals. You don't go it alone. You go through Congress, which of course has to answer to the American public. So he had neither congressional support nor really the popular support of the American people.
On the flip side, Chuck, there's still the question of what is next when it comes to the Iran deal, and renegotiating in this 180-day period.
Iran joins the long list of people in this world who did something very important, never dreaming that Donald Trump would ever become president of the United States. They made a calculation that the United States had made a strategic turn in its approach to the Middle East, that they were now going to sort of like Nixon to China, they were going to open to Iran, and that this would continue on a bipartisan basis, or perhaps Hillary Clinton would be elected. And then, boom, we have an election, and then boom, number two is the president actually keeps his promise. This is very disruptive inside Iran, notwithstanding whatever bluster they may be putting out. They have been thrown back on their heels, and they're looking for a strategy.
And quickly, Europe is going to have to decide whether they want to deal with Iran or deal with the U.S.
Very quickly, is there a risk here that, like President Obama, who desperately wanted that Iran deal for legacy issues, and the administration was clearly focused on that like a laser, that President Trump is in the same position with North Korea, touting it before he sits down with Kim Jong-un?
There's always a risk of that, but you're talking about a completely different guy. You're talking about a guy who, obviously prides himself on being a very smart deal maker, but this is, he has at every turn underscored the fact that it may or may not work out.
And he'll get up and walk away.
Yeah, and that he'll get up and walk away.
Next up, the president's nominee to run the CIA says she will not restart the post-9/11 enhanced interrogation program. The panel on Gina Haspel's confirmation hearing next.
I support the higher moral standard that this country has decided to hold itself to. I would never, ever take CIA back to an interrogation program. My moral compass is strong. I would not allow CIA to undertake activity that I thought was immoral, even if it was technically legal.
This is about who is the right person to be the director of the CIA. And when we choose that person, it's going to be a statement about our values as Americans.
Gina Haspel on the hot seat today. Confirmation hearing, the first woman nominated to lead the CIA. A lot of questions from Democrats about the enhanced interrogation techniques after 9/11. Were they moral? Must have been asked about 10 different ways, different times. What about the tapes that were made, the videotapes documenting waterboarding that were destroyed? A lot of questions about that, despite support from a lot of people in the intelligence community. Back with the panel. Jason, your thoughts on this hearing?
Haspel is not a Justice Department lawyer. She was an operative in the field. Her job was not to determine what the president's powers were under the Constitution. Her job was to keep us safe, which is what she did. I mean, we can argue about the merits or the effectiveness of enhanced interrogation, but there is no doubt, Bret, that it was legal at the time of this operation. And at the end of the day, though, I don't think that this is really about her qualifications. It's not about the merits. It's about the strategy of the left to delay or resist Trump nominees. That's what this is really about.
So a lot of the time, Chuck, was spent to try to get her to say that it was immoral and that she didn't stand up and do something about it at the time. Well, here's a soundbite from 2013 and John Brennan's hearing.
You receive the daily updates from the time of Abu Zubaydah's capture throughout his interrogation, including the analysis of the lawfulness of the techniques, putting you in a position to express any concerns you had about the program. What steps did you take to stop CIA from moving to these techniques you now say you found objectionable at the time?
I did not take steps to stop the CIA's use of those techniques.
And we went on about that, essentially the same answer. What about this hearing today?
A lot of posturing about morality in the spy business. And I must say, they're forcing Gina Haspel to be a hypocrite, because if you are going to be director of the CIA and you're going to be out there doing cloak and dagger operations as she's been doing for 35 years, you need, as she says, she has a moral compass, but you need a flexible one. Let's be real. That's what spies do. They do things that might not be legal, but they're moral in the sense that they're what your government demands of you. And so I think this entire exercise is pretty hollow in that sense. I mean, we're picking somebody to run an intelligence agency. Having said that, the interrogation tactics that went on were beyond the pale. I'm glad they're illegal now. They were counterproductive. It's not, you know, there's a huge argument about how much good they may have done. But to the extent that they're trying to pin her down to some idea that our spy agency should be something that like represents American values, you know, we're going to be forever disappointed in that regard, because that's just not the nature of the business.
On a political issue, you already have Joe Manchin saying that he's going to vote for it. I bet you're probably going to get a few more Democrats from red states who say, you know what, the terrorism thing I'm okay with voting for Gina Haspel, the first woman to run the CIA.
Yeah, no, I think that she will get through. She'll probably get through with a surprising number of Democrats. This is a terrible fight for Democrats. Democrats have a unique ability to pick terrible fights, and this is one of them. And it really does have to do with all of that business about the moral. You know, was it moral? How did you feel? You know, that's not what matters. All that matters is what the law is. What is effective.
Panel, thank you. When we come back, a prom night remembered.